chipo doji tes ngena roda lam thambad ding tiring chamde gyu zo namsum lang sajde gyu zo namsum lang
Okay. Right. So we have been looking at a text that is called Mind Training like the rays of the sun. And currently we're looking at a set of instructions that is found in the text in the form of verse or maxim. So today we're going to pick up on an instruction that is called seek for the three principal causes. So this line is taken from the seven-fold mind training, 7-point mind training. And mind training like the rays of the sun is giving a commentary on this text.
terda jidang azuda lojong di shude goras ra sanyima tenza tachidan number 3 ta manche kengros ke chejong ro di kandas chagi yeme di nganzula ya lusem yiwanza nganzul lu devo yongya ge chedu lujong che ya soba anchi kase ten ya soba tamangbu tonne ta lu devo yongya ge tolan bezun shu chegoras ine ani sem tolaya 직 sem kibu yongya di pi lu devo yongya ge gyugen di ge 직 sem kibu yongya ge rewa gyabni 소라지 tamangche dini roji lago rasra da di sem kibu yong tu meba di tanga sibu roji chagonza ani sem jongya di ge ani tab shemba chik tengu yoba ro da di 아니 로종 디낭로야 송구도 asro 딘작다 개첨부 임바디 드레샤.
So during the Sunday morning sessions, we have been looking at a text that explains how to train our mind, which for us becomes very important. For first of all, we recognize that we have two levels, you can say, to this life. There is the physical level, we have a body, but we also have a mind. And when we take care of the body, we might do some exercise or maintain a healthy diet. But for the mind to become happy, for the mind to become well or healthy, it does not depend only on having a healthy body. It is clear that if we take care of the body alone, only take care of the body, try to maintain it in a state of well-being, does not mean to say that the mind will be made happy or well. So it is clearly then showing that we need to find other ways or other methods for training the mind in order to develop and maintain mental well-being.
들다 당홍 기회 담바초로 베나 곰불루드 야슬라 소바 초란 슈드 야슬라 소베 테니 지비 톤로 다 송야려야 나도 류그란신도디 쇼지기베 야긴 타메버 드여비게 아니 란신 지레모도스 네가 비게 테스 야긴도 다칭 교원 상위 철이야 교원 땅바이나야 테네 마 콜도야디 마 냠도야디 류그란신 레샤스 셈그란신 지레모도스 셈디 카츠스키 존더치와 티츠기 아니 서서 야르 아니 탐메번 드여비 란신 지레샤스 딘자 아니 간주 류그 톨야 투츠 땅야레 라가지 아니 셈그 톨야 투츠 땅니 셈 존투바이나 야세 야탐바 펜돈도 더 딜송거라 더 디송샤스로
So we have great Indian masters, those great masters of the past. From the Indian tradition, we have teachers like, for example, Nagarjuna and his spiritual children. Another one is Dignaga. And also Dignaga had his own followers. They use a rational path that is based on reasoning. And the basic reasoning that they use is um, basic reasonings are based on, first of all, recognizing that we might train a body to do a particular thing. We might improve the way that the body can do a particular thing, but it's not that the body can be developed limitlessly. There is a limit to what we can do with the body. And also as time goes by, the body declines. This is actually within the nature of the body to decline, to deteriorate. So it's not that we can do limitless things during using the body. But the mind is not the same. The mind is not the same because we can continue to train the mind. It can improve more and more to become better, to become clear. And there is no limit to what we can do with the mind. There is no limit to how far we can go with our mental training. This is really clear. And therefore, rather than investing most of our time in training our body, here, from the point of view of this tradition, we place an emphasis on training our mind.
데르다 아망부셔 무고치로 베나 간주 통대야 류그로 간주 통대야 류라야 류종 째치네 류라야 류 종더체체 베게데 지 칼라이나 네버친부세 종더체 로션션 갑라야 지 류드 베게 지 아니 착부당 아니 지 부탁부 소르치 샤고라스라 데니야 아슬레온디 아니 게온디 류드 란신 기 도르고다다 로 컵드고다 싸원이니 탑시 싸원이니 매버치 샤고라스라 딘자다 아니 샘디 딘디 많이 봐 다 샘디 딘디 많이 봐 시비기 샘델이야 아니 조 니체샤스 로 비기 류르 템비기 류르야 하장 아니 댄스 체비기 샘기 리직다 조 일로 코란이야 템비기 아니 샘 니체니 먼저 종고야디 일로를 템비기 샘 로 일로를 템비기 샘디 장바이나 다디 토네 아니 잠제 생긴다 박페불라 소바 아니 대자세단 때문 용로야 두 지원디게 아니 류 가주스 게바이나야 아니 샘기 박페부 친 메 박페부 친 데투야로 소바 어 딘지지 송고도 왔으라
So we might train our body to do a particular thing. We might take up a certain regime of exercise and our diet would be supportive of that. And it depends upon that, our body might become sturdy and strong, or we might develop muscle tissues. But at some point, the body will still continue this process of escalation, will deteriorate to the point in which when we grow old, it starts to bend over and so forth. So it's not that the body can be improved limitlessly. As we said, the mind is not like that. But when we speak about the mind and being able to develop the mind limitlessly, we can distinguish between two types of minds or consciousnesses. The ones that are supported on the body, physical consciousnesses, and there is a mental consciousness. So when we take up mental training, we are not working with the physical consciousnesses, we are working with the mental consciousness. And we are training our mental consciousness in the development of love and compassion, a sense of caring for others, to be made more spacious and serene and calm, to decrease anger, attachment, ignorance, and so forth. So if we take up these in our mental training, the person that has this kind of mind will find that the life would be made so much more spacious and easy.
데르드네 베나다 류르 템비기 넘버 10디 원싱가로 소바 로 원싱가디 아니 조 류기 비기다지 아니 류기 잘이야 숙침부 땡돼야지 레자토스려야 숙침부 땡돼야지 디 아니 류 거본디기 텔 템비기 namshetiya maseva chandra kuyunguyaras ra tenza dimjigi ani shibi rigdi pena kewa chiman namja sheba no kewa chimala yan rogmudas lutin gagbana ani lule tembigo ombon gadrogori ombol tembigo namshetiya gadrogori kewa chimala yan roguyo mares tabigi yilu tobati ani namshi chawadi ta drogores dichidigi nganzu ten delaya ro suzuki pigita chik mi lu kebawaji yaba ti tenlaya ani sem chamo delaya gogyo jab tuyajida sem chamo delaya jongda etubaji jongba yinbayina teni pendo shuji songyores ro ta diri di songyores
Ilu tokpa se di
iki namba sheba dojira
Right, 최선의 똑바디 dunjitsugi 똑바디 말로.
mare
Yeah.
mare
So then when we look at a physical level, we have 5 sense consciousnesses. The eye consciousness, ear consciousness, and so forth. We have also a physical consciousness, a body consciousness. And the sense consciousnesses depend upon our physical makeup in a sense that there is a system of channels that go through our body, the blood system, the nervous system, and so forth. So when the body is growing older and older and is going through a process of decline, also the system of channels, physical channels, is also going through the same process, and therefore the consciousnesses that are functioning independent upon this system also lose their edge in a sense that they become unclear, they do not work or function like they used to before. And when we come to the end of our life, when the sense powers that support the sense consciousnesses stop functioning, also those sense consciousnesses stop, and therefore these are not the consciousnesses that go from this life to the next. What goes from this lifetime to the next is our mental consciousness. A mental consciousness which is way more subtle. It is a subtle consciousness, and if we work with more subtle levels of consciousness, we can, if we train them, if we create some movement, we can accomplish a great deal.
There's a dingy lo jong tabdi karesendi. The Guzo Namson launch senti. Shebanis, Jir tu ba samba, gomsum kang chejan, cheta du chu di gorshunis, lo jong walaya, nangi ken, tanjur ki luden la, deba, shereb, zongju so, kachu nam chansang wa, chi ken, medan ki parmachivi givishinis. The givishin chiktan, jalne, jeshen du jesun zamba. Ti kapsu segusu tunjen tani pambala tendu yoba chik chona. Chojedan shenyen tenban jaba tabu chik onsun dude ranja yonden la ke chijen maungban deda kanrung mansam yukyon dun hangwe maungbana deda samba shen tsani yonden yangu dajen pewer gyu sosajan malam daba chawos.
And so as we read through the 7-point mind training, we have an instruction that says, seek for the 3 principal causes. And the text reads, whatever practice of hearing, contemplation, or meditation you do in general, particularly having entered the practice of mind training, if you possess the inner condition of life as a free and fortunate human being endowed with the good qualities of faith, discriminating awareness, effort, and so forth, and the external condition of having formed a warm and honest relationship with a spiritual master, who is delighted to take care of you. Under such circumstances, if you have access to such facilities as food and clothing, moderation, then it may turn out as did the meeting of the great Atisha and Jomtumba. Evidently, if you are missing one of these conditions indicated by inadequate improvement in your understanding, you should endeavor to accumulate positive qualities as causes and pray that your knowledge will increase like the waxing moon.
The same the Jombalaya and 다 류 배주 치고 그랬어. 류 배주 간다 치고 그랬더니 배나 류를 땜비기 나왜 엄보 배주 제니 자 자녀로 써봐. 그러 피기다 레시마 땡인게 아니 개위신인게 아니 말레시 땜바티 소소 약부 고주 거바티 된디 아니 제들치 삼로탄 되니 곰 어디면은 피기게 다지 단단한 저 시행을 제무튼 게 빼나 고물로 역시를 써봐 저중가 봐도 써봐 디디기 손마 이 토라 빠샤고 겨티 아니 미기 비기 야 약부치 대체 아니 칸네 말 숙심을 라 근데 디텐 삼로탄 아니 텔레콤 두치온디 더 사말로 아니 르가 익선 배주치야지 디기 아니 곰용디게 아니 템버 템부차야 템버 시부차야 템버 템부더 시부차온디 아니 비 되메기 촉스 만들어야 라 아니 로츠 템부친 데토야라 소바 딜리 용거라서 라
Now here when it explains the causes for our mental training, it says when we train our mind, we need to make sure that we also use the body. We, for example, use the sense consciousnesses which are supported on the body, like, for example, our auditory consciousness. We listen to explanations given to us by our spiritual teachers, by our virtuous friends. We listen to them well, but not just listen to them, we also take them up in analysis and investigation. We scrutinize those teachings and then we put them into practice in our meditation. And for that, even though we haven't met some of those masters in person, like, for example, the master Nagarjuna and Naga and Lama Tsongkhapa and so forth, still we have their writings, and their writings are taught to us by spiritual teachers. So we can then study, reflect, and meditate on those teachings to the point in which we become clearer and clearer about those teachings. We are able to develop positive, good states of mind in depends upon that. And we also develop stability.
데리딘자 베나 다 딜리 페제 마지나 아니 다마님 발라 소바 착단 기야기 아니 조제 엔딩이 자녀로 소바 라 피기 다 율라 다운디 착단 기사 율 틴딜이야 아니 슈스 대바이나 딜 때니 착단 기 딜 때니 셈마기바 드딩한 사말이야 뇽해요라 딜리 아니 나베 안보티 페지야 치야리야 케비 렉시니야 페지 제바나 케비 렉시 테벌 때니 랑기 셈라야 로사바치 로 아니 셰르브 사바치 기야 규도그라스 로 아니 손르 야부 로야 미키 페지 제바나 아니 손르 그 텐디 셈라 샤야지 아니 닐루 똑투야지 딘디지 레바나 아니 간지 셈피 종고야기 종규 셈피 다치 개닉다위 셈기 아니 차당 모선로 소바 디디 년 야지야다 뭐 짱모 소리 소야요 바치 어디래도 아스라
So we want to attend the mind to explanation that we get, which will be useful to us. Otherwise, if we just use our sense consciousnesses, such as our auditory consciousness, to listen to things that fuel our anger, attachment, and ignorance, our mind will just be made more unhappy if we only listen to things that fuel our afflictions. We have an experience in that sense, so we don't need to elaborate on that much. But if we get used to useful explanation given to us by a spiritual teacher, we can use that in order to develop our mind, to develop wisdom, to develop clarity of mind. And we can also use that, to develop realization of reality and insight into reality. So there's a lot of garbage happening in our mind, the garbage of anger, attachment, and ignorance. And using this process of study, listening to teachings and analyzing it and so forth, we can clear away that mental garbage of anger, attachment, and so forth.
Re dinang ya rakpa kanyi ngun la jangs. Sa sem jang yung digi rinpa dama suna thoma kari tsama sugor say. Thoma kari tsama sugor suna ani chakpa che shu di pigi, rak shu di. Ngunsil tenbu shu chik. An thong de jora. Tapena music kashi hachang ki pigi ge kongro sawu. Yang kashi chakpa chenbu. Yang kashi chakdo sawu. Ani kashi ngarget sawu. Dindi yora tadi, right? Koran nimu chanza yoba na ya. Rig mantra dindi yungora dinza gang raba di sosul ya gyön chishu gang ba di ming ni jongo gres. Raba gang una jongs.
So how do we clean our mind? Here, the next instruction says, purify the coarser ones first. So we have different afflictions that operate in our mind, and we first off need to deal with the coarser ones. And we are different to each other in that we have different dispositions. So for some of us, anger might be the strongest affliction, for others, attachment, for some, pride, for others, jealousy. We need to begin with dealing with the causes affliction first, the strongest one, and clear that.
Re shebanes jir nimu kunji nimbo lambevji. Cheta du rangyul la shibi le tagni, susu gila ya tagni. Nimu kangra ngunsin chiwi nimbo lambevni temper chawos.
And so the text says you must make an effort to counter all the disturbing emotions in general, and in particular the coarser ones, through a fine analysis of your mind.
There that tension kanyi lamar chas. Chawa kari cheba ina ya, tenda kan cheba di, tenda kari ke cheba di, thomal lengo gres.
And then it says practice that which is more effective. Not only more effective, when we adopt the approach to our mental training, we deal with the coarser afflictions first, but we also learn to identify the most important activities for us for the time being. And this is what we need to focus on, or to practice the things that are meaningful, the things that are important.
Tere da nganzu song tamba ina, nganzu tagni song tamba ina, nganzu tenda ke cheba di, len shingyo maras, tanga dama chejigi, tenda ke cheba di kari res lava ina, pena randa shenyi la ya jarchimiro. Ane randyong ke chegre, shendyong ke chegre sana, nima chejigi. Sosu randyong ke chegre che samsong rachimado, shendyong ke cheba imba di, sor tug maras.
So whatever we do, it's important to make sure that we take up the things that are meaningful, that are more meaningful. And it's hard. It's hard for everyone. And Geshe said that also it's hard for him in that sometimes we don't really know how to sort out our priorities, to focus on the things that matter most. Like, for example, just to illustrate that, we have ourselves, which is one person, and we have others. So our attitude is still based on focusing mainly on ourselves, self-centered attitude, a selfish attitude, and we neglect others. Whereas if you think about it just in terms of volume or numbers, there are more others than just oneself. So others are more important than oneself. So this is, for example, this is one example of not getting our priorities completely clear, or not getting our priorities right. Rather than focusing on others, we focus on ourselves.
어디래다 딘디 톤 성당바이나 아니 수수 성당단지 노르데여 버도치 라트바이나 타디 상야려야 베준 체징 사라스라 베나 쳔데데 치마 다키와 치마 키 meleng이 짐바나 갑두 가서 라야 카보르 마다 다키와 치마 키 랭이 짐바나 란다 셴이가는 셴 개체와나 신기 쳔데데 치마니가니 치마 개체야지 치마 개침부 증이 짐바이나 아니 자체 자담바 미디 다가랑기 미디 상초라야 공부부터에 책도 들어.
So then if we think about it, we can recognize our mistakes and make effort to clean them, to clear them away. But often we don't do that because we become still unclear with respect to levels of reality. Like, for example, if you do not accept the existence of past and future lifetimes, some of these contemplations will be difficult. But for a person that does accept or believe that future lifetimes exist, and next lifetimes, as there are many of them, become more important than just this lifetime. So through that understanding, the priorities naturally start to shift from focusing mainly on this life to focusing on the future lives.
다디나노라야 칼자르두스라 온디 텐션 칸이 라마차세티 베나 디 테버침비 로종 야 람겐솔라야 랍자인 번자 찬주구 셈 장당 다 찬주구 셈디 마기바 게바 네버 코네 페유 체도 제소 파진 주기 다 냠내라야 랍고 그러왔어 다 제소 파진 주야 랍고 어디 딱 통마 가르치게 그랬어 바로 가르치게 타마 가르치게 다디 개체 좀디 신비토네 랍투바이나 아니 다 야기 로에도 역부슈 아니 tum제도 무슨 역부슈 텐트에 인관자 디신고 그랬어
So when these instructions to practice stuff which is more effective or more important, of greater priority, here the text gives an explanation from the point of view of training in the Mahayana mind training. So it is a specific instruction which says that if you take up the Mahayana mind training practice and you train in bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, as it says here, in general, generosity is worthwhile, but observance of pure moral discipline is more powerful. So when you train in bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, you train in the attitude that seeks to develop bodhicitta, if you haven't done so, to maintain it, to prevent it from falling into decline, and also to increase it more and more. So for that end, we practice the 6 perfections, such as generosity. So here it mentions generosity and moral disciplines and so forth as part of the 6 perfections, which are required for the trainings in bodhicitta. And as such, as we progress in the trainings of the 6 perfections, we need to be able to identify what is important at the beginning, what is important in the middle, and what is important at the end, and to monitor our progress to know which part of the practice should be emphasized. And if we are able to do that, if we know how to do that, we can improve and progress quickly.
베나 다 뉴몽 도숨 장발이야 디 님보 공도 질 님무군이 님보세 뉴몽 님보 탈도바디 셔럽들이스 셔럽 내룩도 셔럽들이스 다 셔럽 디 피기게 아니 시부당 템부 야부 지용해라야 아니 땡인즈라야 땡고 그랬어 땡인즈 라발에 다 땡인진세데 율라야 찍도베 제단 돈도 피기게 아니 찍도 아니 땐 대통령이 샘들이스 다 딘지 샘디 용거 잡아라야 아니 샘 가서가라야 총종이 그러 아니 착받 피기게 아니 조 착받당 되니 몸발을 써봐 아니 되기디 아니 까고 그랬어 조다 샘 이야지 유조디 착받을 놨어 그래서 착받 까고 착받 까발이야 착받 dom고 착받 dom비기 아니 수름 길라발이야 라고 그랬어 딘디 수름 길라바디 아니 탈추바당 템부 야부치 용야 제발이야 아니 비기 착샘디 용땅 거서 착샘 용땅에 탑이 약슈디 아니 센나 좀야 진비 냠내는 주게 된사 아니 토마다 지소 파신 주기 냠내려야 주야려야 아니 짐바땅이라 주고도 짐비 냠내려야 세나들의 가지기 인부텐투와 뒤쪽이 아니 착섬 용들어야 착섬 용바이나 수름이야 랍투와 수름 랍아 두나 단지슈가 나신 도스 림비진 레투도스라.
So just to illustrate this point, our goal is to purify the three poisonous afflictions from our mind stream: anger, attachment, and ignorance. And in order to purify those afflictions, the general antidote to, or the universal antidote to all of these afflictions is wisdom. Wisdom that realizes reality, the way that things exist. But for developing clear wisdom and stable wisdom, we need to develop concentration. Concentration is supportive of the development of clear and stable wisdom that will be able to antidote our afflictive states of mind. But to develop concentration in which your mind is at will, is capable of remaining placed upon a certain object without moving away to other objects, without losing its clarity. In order to develop that consciousness, which is that concentration, which is completely at will, we need to have a stable mind, and the mind needs to be not susceptible to attachment, to confusion, and so forth. Because so long as the mind is still affected by attachment, by a sense of confusion, so long as a mind becomes distracted by different objects, our concentration will still be impeded. So we need to arrest attachment and so forth. And to arrest attachment, we need ethical discipline. Now, to develop stable ethical discipline, we need to reduce attachment. If we can reduce attachment, we'll be able to maintain ethical discipline in a way that is more stable and effective. So in order to then reduce attachment, we need to stop miserliness. So a way for stopping miserliness, or at least reducing miserliness, is to practice generosity. So the more we practice generosity and thereby apply an antidote to attachment, the more capable we are of developing ethics, moral discipline. That will act as a support for concentration, that will also be supportive of wisdom. So this is the instructions that is given with respect to practice that which is more effective, in a sense that know how to sort out your priorities in your practice.
Terda tatsu ane pige nambalaya shugchene tebo chimbi chu ngus nyams lending solaya ngus tisungu yorwas tra tisungu yoresta.
So this section is addressing directly someone that is taking up a Buddhist practice, and not only that, but also practices bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment.
Tere inaya dige di tolaya pige tachi namba email ma jeba ane samloji tang tu wa na jacha jatamba sosolaya pendo yungres ro pena control shukche tawa na kadyu na randa rota sama makibachi chagdo asra tinashingi pena jacha shukche tawa na ti wang songchene ane chik tsuming ki chawa mamu shu chik cheyalaya ane jacha ki gyugur maso chigdo asra ane pigi ta chik mesang jinbaya na ya chukshin jangi dewa suraji jacha chagdo asra ane tiri da rangi sem chungin sem pigi la ya pak pebu chi neya la ya parchu chingin zu chi ya jacha chagwa res kinza tartuk na susu magiwa sungin di jacha dan kongcho dan ngarge chagdo jansam la soba digi da yacha yadam susu pak pebu meba magiwa sogu yoba di sibu shuji res rwa.
And although this section of the text is focusing on someone that is a Buddhist practitioner and practices the instructions of bodhicitta and the mind of enlightenment, still we can also adopt a more general overview of these instructions, regardless of whether you're a Buddhist practitioner or not. You can still think about it and receive some benefits. Like, for example, recognizing how the afflictions disturb our mind. Like, for example, when anger arises in our mind, how our mind becomes disturbed. Not only our mind becomes disturbed, also when we look at the damage that it inflicts upon ourselves and upon our surrounding, our family, and so forth, we can see the detrimental effects of anger. And also when we look at what attachment causes a mind, attachment causes a mind to become weary, to become quite tired in chasing after the objects of attachment. And also when we look at the disturbances that we experience in the family unit, we can recognize how there's so much related to attachment. What prevents the mind from becoming vast and spacious and quiescent is attachment. In short, so long as a mind is affected greatly by anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, competitiveness, and so forth, a mind will not remain in a state that is calm and spacious. So regardless of whether we are Buddhist practitioners or not, we can recognize the detrimental effects of those afflictive states of mind and become determined to address them.
소소라야 공고 쇼지 매바이나야 아니 지 퇴비 고대 소리지 안 디체더니 메시 거란 지워서 소셜로 소바 그러 아니 세빌레는 주게야 아니 착백이 대인 것도 asro 셴 비기게 아니 지 벤저 균노 아니 벤 최소 수준에 아니 초약이 규디 아니 착성 그 지기어라서 세빌레를 주게 돼 착성 그 지고라서
we can recognize that what makes us so busy in life is attachment to different things. We chase after them. We spend a life chasing after material things, even if we don't necessarily need them. So we can recognize that currently we have enough to get by, but still with a sense of attachment, it seems that we need so much more, even things we don't really need. So we chase after them throughout our life. We become quite busy with that, but also on account of that, we end up harming others. We act in a way that is detrimental to others. We might take advantage of others, take their possessions, steal, try to steal the wealth, or at least take it away from them. That also occurs due to attachment.
dimji gündengi tuzu tolay samlutani teni chagba dombi kontro dombi shedanla sobo dombi gita ani labshala yar jugbayna yashi yatamba ani tentuye yungu yasarayas ra.
And so you think of those states of mind and you think about them continuously, and then you engage in practices or in trainings for putting a stop to anger, attachment, hostility, and so forth.
Delda nyamba meba namsum goms. The gündingi manya bache koyagi kicheshu jiki nambasum yoris.
So just reading through those instructions, it says, similarly, it is most important to lay the potential for the awakening mind and not to be separated from it under any circumstances. Now, the next instruction says, don't let the three factors weaken.
Tadina kari randu slaundi lama la tegu manyamba lava la payo manyamba lojong la tro manyamba. That this some kitchen bu shojeres the lojong dongin jigun lojong chingin jigun tebo chimbu lojong la lamgin jingune That doesn't pay kitchen is.
Particularly here for training in the Mahayana mind training, we do not let the three factors weaken. And the three factors are faith and esteem in the Lama, the spiritual teacher. We do not become unconscientious with respect to the trainings, and we do not lose our yearning for mind training. Particularly for those who take up this practice of mind training, it is important to make sure that these three factors do not decline.
There that lama la teba said, and stanging on the tebi yula majena, and teba said, the youngers that tebi yul pig kunjo dan, lama dan, on tindila mashevich, stang ben the Suzuki, the Mitzinangi, Robert Rojala Javana, Robala Yi Chevadi, Robala teba say, Kakola 60 temperatures. The decade pig kitchen burra, Susu Robert Delaya. Hichi lo mevayna, teba mevayna, then give your marasra. Give your mother until then, piggy lunga chobati and maram tong de the younger and do chin any Zawani yam the dende mevala soba and carter goela soba and six duja page chielo soba and then never yes, some this summer you go and teba meval then.
So the first factor mentioned here is having trust in a Lama or a spiritual friend. So we speak about faith. Now, we need to have faith in the spiritual friend or in the Lama. So we use the word faith in relation to the three jewels or in relation to the Lamas, which means that we use that in a religious context, but also when we think about the word faith, not in a religious context, but in relation to, for example, our friends. Sometimes the word faith is used as a substitute for trusting, like, for example, trusting your friends. So you have friends, and if you don't trust them, if you don't have faith in them, your mind is not going to be happy or well when you spend some time with them, when you hang out with them. Not only that, also our physical and verbal behavior becomes quite negative if we don't have the sense of trust in others. We become more distant from them. It brings about separation. We might also end up speaking ill of them or even harming them.
Terida, Didida, Teba Yashudi cargos, Teba Yashudi, Sheriff told the chibi, Teba said, Teba Yashudi is draw. Anzutaji, Takji Kai Machini, Iji Chishawana, and Samson the Yanga Tia, draw. The Euros, draw. Middelia, Shimjuchi Machine, Middle, and Jasijata Iji Chiavana, and Yangaji Euros, draw. The Nene Piggy. Medigita Yavjonda and the someone you learn with Tony and so the trouble dance. Trouble dance with Jilla, Jessican Yatam, Chichim, Robanda, the Dembushu, Kibushu Joras, the Nanshinki, Lama Givisinia, Tembalaya, Nela, and Chona Julian Chigoet, Julian Chits with Jella, and it Teba chats with Jella. Zawin, the Chindian Javana. Then the Yahuchago Maris.
So the best type of faith that we develop needs to be supported by wisdom. It needs to be supported by wisdom that has investigated, that analyzed the object of our faith or trust, without, first of all, making sure that we develop wisdom. Just having faith in someone could turn out to be dangerous. So we first become acquainted with that person. We can assess the qualities, and then we can become their friends in a sense that we develop a sense of trust in them. The same attitude we can develop with our spiritual teachers, with the lamas. so that the trust that we have can become stable, and you can also make the mind happy well. So first off, it's good to become more familiar with that person, with that spiritual teacher. And once you become familiar with them and you have seen the qualities and you develop faith in them, here from the point of this spiritual path, it is considered to be negative, or at least not a good situation, if you allow that the faith that he had them, to decline.
그래도 달 하발라 바요세디 라바싱이다 비게 냠닝기 내려 잡아야나 수tum 들어왔어. 딘디게 변하다 넘버 많이 봐. 딱 간지 추 아니 지 출룩 매딩인게 미지기 봐야나야. 랑기 라바 송세디 샤초고 사데스라. 하스나 수수기 담자 잡았지. 레전 카리 지기 봐야나야. 레전 지기 있었는데 담자 샤야 줄었어. 디 라바가 최 샤초고스. 디 수수 담자 샤교디 아니 피게 박매 체제네. 아니 담자 듣다가스 벌쭉 대바이나 간삼 jelaya chawa karin god sombayna tar making chaya ani komshi dugja thegda ninga peyoros ra ani bena mandu shong duzo namala ya keban namju chen sogi lela tamja chig mares kedi tamja chig chebadi bi do gala be ko jab shaba nan shi che gyoba zawni dogmar sonra o dimchi chig yobayna ra 아니 레전 가르치바나 탈주투겠지. 그러. 탈주투겠지. 연구하랬어. 라발라 그야디 빼케쳔보. 마구나 아니 수술에 연란 쇼트야지. 약란 쇼트야지. 어디 차고 왔어.
So the first thing that we should not allow to weaken is the faith or esteem that we have in the spiritual teacher. Now, the second one is to not allow the training to decline. So from a Buddhist perspective, we take up the 3 trainings and we pledge to do so. The source of our training, for example, the basis of our training is ethical discipline. And we make pledges in relation to our ethical discipline. But still, Geshe reckons that we can also work for someone that is not Buddhist or not a spiritual practitioner in general. You can, for example, you can decide to do something and then pledge to do it. And if you have made a pledge to do it, if you end up being unconscientious with respect to your pledge, then either you will discard the promises that you have made, or that you might take up something and not bring it to completion, and thereby developing bad habits of studying up things but not bringing them to their end. It is said actually that those great masters of the past were not keen to rush to make new pledges and new commitments, but once they've committed themselves to do something, they've made a pledge, it was like carving in stone, etching it in stone. They never walked away from it. So here, the second instruction says that we should not become unconscientious with respect to the trainings, the commitments that we have made.
소소 이시차도 그러서 디기 다 야고모다 디 야고 말다 간지 켈린 제츠베젤이야 남의 단상이 미디 아니 템부시를 요 말했어 간지 미 템부지 간지 미 야고시 차고나 아니 소소 켈린 제자와디 아니 딱다 중경 제트거지 어디서다 다 바요 봤다 바요 많이 봤어야지 디르다.
So if we make a commitment in the presence of someone and we do not do as we committed to do, we do not abide by our promises, we become a person that is not trustworthy. And as such, others will lose the trust that they have in us. things will not result in a positive way for us. If we disregard our commitments, it means that we become someone that is not stable. So if we have made some commitments, we should be conscientious about them. We should carry out what we've committed to do. So this is the second factor that should not be weakened.
Teni lojong la draw manya ba sedi. Be mazba kitchen but that chagora swa. Nganzu midi susu yagi drogo chona. Ta yagi dro mundeng jo maras. Yagi drogo chona ani namju go da. Namju di lojong cheni namju tiya modo. Ani jamba tabchi yo maras ba. Bena kali gyavni Shengo Gortani, Kaligel Soba, Wanychel Sobatoni, Negavki Pena Benjur Chubutindi, Sotur, the Tea Midi Yagis Maresna, and then Mumadi Yagis out in Mares. Kola Yagi kind rumors.
Now, the third thing that we should make sure is that we do not lose our enthusiasm in seeking to train our mind in our mind training practice. So when we take up this practice of mind training, we develop our mind, we develop wisdom. Wisdom is, you can say, an outcome of our mind training practice. So we might develop wisdoms in different ways. We might work hard in order to do a particular thing, and we might become a bit smart in doing that, but it's not necessarily that it is always happening in a positive way or following a positive direction. See, we might be working hard, but still our hard work will be spent in cheating others or deceiving others or taking advantage of others, bullying others and so forth, in order to get what we want, in order to maybe amass some possessions or wealth and so forth. So if we get what we want, does it mean that we are making a progress? Well, we might get what we want, but it does not mean to say that we are improving.
Lojong la draw nyambayna, Lojong la draw nyambayna, Lojong chedita, the Lojong in the draw nyambayna, Zam Shadu Rasta. Zam Shawi Lojong ched, Zam Shawi Nimon Cheni, Midi Yagi Droyadi, Zam Shawat, Chibadoch.
So here it says that we need to maintain this delight, this enthusiasm in training our mind, either in studying or training our mind, and that a person that suspends that is a person that does not make progress.
Benjugi Dandangan Namju Nutu Meva, Benjugi Deva Nutu Meva. Ani Dindi Lagdosra, Kazang in Fonda, Africa major Posatoj, Patadi, Enichi, Camboroj, Kulagadra, Peshagam the denting your two resa, in a new quid in your two master. Dindi Sigma we should Pesha with money castle, Ben new tourists in and not in sleeps to shake there. Doesn't need you bedos, one rose, right? On the Kibudi, Nyoyameva. Ani Namju Nyoyameva. Susu Junguet, Besenchi.
So we might become more wealthy, we might have possession. It does not mean to say that they can buy us happiness. Geshe met the other day someone who told him that he used those catchphrases for illustrating that point. Instead of, for example, I have enough money to buy bed, but it does not mean to say that it can buy me sleep. So no, it doesn't mean that I will not, even though I have a comfortable bed, that my sleep will be comfortable. So without working hard, the point here is that we might have possession and wealth, but without working hard, it does not mean to say that we can be happy or that we can develop wisdom.
There's a same kipu giovano. Denti yabu mevana, ni kivu quest. Same pig something galayovana. And Dentiga Javana, Niki Kutumar, he sort of Kanji Namju Triadi, Namju Trin Slaundi, and leg big chaggy, 아니 샘들 종야 출래야 디렌도스 디 내야 로종래야 조왕이 벌 고고라스
If your mind is happy and well, even if you don't have a good bed, you can still have very good sleep in that sense. So here the point is that if we develop, in order to develop our wisdom, we take up the practice of mind training. And here we ought not to lose our delight or enthusiasm in training our mind.
레 냠밤에 보스다 라몬라 대규면의 연된 기비게 고메비 체당스 라 연된데 비기다 주디 베나 창바다 자와 셰르블라 소바 라 디주 우연 내출이야 되니 아니 기고건사 우연 내출 남긴지 해봐야나 먼저 란싱 신투고 말았다 우연 내출 댐빈 닐룩 신지 말아봐 땡엔텔이야 라마 댐바 라마 디차거든 텔라 이치 메바이나 디자는 냥거 말았다 디자는 마녀는 냥사요 말다 때 냥사 메들 시야기 고고요 말했어 딘디 왜 엔자 윤세마모도스.
So the text says this refers to not letting your faith in and respect for your spiritual masters diminish. So that's the first principle. So the master is the one that teaches how to develop love and care for others, how to develop wisdom. And those are things that we need to be taught. It's not those things we learn just by ourselves on our own accord, but we need someone to unerringly teach us what is real, what is true. And without having faith in that person, we're not going to become receptive to what they say. If we're not going to become receptive or attentive to what they say, then our wisdom will be impeded.
라볼라 바요 냠노 수tum 타비 고고메비 체디 니동라 조바 탐지 박메비 체비체로 로종라 조냐나 장스 이연된 통이 대바당 대담에 넘버서 메비 아니 카 최점마도 니니 되니 메바 대놈 대다기 껴노.
So this refers to not letting your faith in and respect for your spiritual teacher diminish, not letting your attention to ethical training waver, and not letting your joy in mind training lessen. If you do not believe in or respect your master, there is no way for you to develop knowledge. And if your concern for ethical training decreases, there is no chance for your ethics to be pure, for all downfalls and misdeeds come about through recklessness. If your interest in mind training declines, you will lack the faith that would enable you to appreciate the qualities of the awakening mind and the aspiration and so forth that are its result. The drawback of this is that lacking a heartfelt interest in the doctrine or in the Dhamma, you will pay it only lip service.
Then Dhamma sum the Dhamma chas.
Now, the next instruction taken from the 7-point mind training is never be parted from the 3 possessions.
Dirida, Dinaloya, Tambudi, Lama, the Kunjolaya Jardo, Sheban, Sulu, Lamatan, Kunjo Soji Shabto. Chiguris.
Now, when it says never be parted from the 3 possessions, the first is referring to the Lama and the 3 jewels. So you should not cease to perform virtuous physical actions, such as the act of service towards your spiritual masters and the 3 jewels, prostrations and circumambulations.
Tadi big that lojong big Janjusen big that mensum the so chogeson big kanji jamri dombalne. But the Zolaya Sunguanza, Lulama Tamata Chigores. And on the mid Chitangi Mijilaya, big Chu Kimmeling in Jilaya, Tensan, Chu Kimalenia, and it's Chu big any Karishi me, and D ton Sozolaya, Lavjalay and Doom to something. And Dinjiga Minam Juji, Mambu Yorosra. The Namjujera, there's a Namjujera.
So here, in terms of mind training, in the context of we train a mind in the development of bodhicitta, we begins with bodhicitta, or the awakening mind. So we begin with developing an aspirational bodhicitta. We have also other things that we train it, such as, for example, we have gone for refuge. We might have taken the refuge vow. So this is what we do as part of our practices, Buddhist practitioners of mind training in this context, but also there are others who study such systems regardless of whether or not they have actually become Dharma practitioners. So even if you do not accept the Dharma, if you're not a Dharma practitioner, you can still check out those teachings. You can attend teachings. You can listen to what they say, and you can also think, what can I take from those teachings that could be of benefit to me? If you approach it like that, then this is a smart approach.
same thing ani kushib dang garden samyala soba ani thagdun de jik sozula ya da lu jinging ro tungyur janging ki ani phama gengo sola ya tuta ani shabdo ro garden timbiton chebayna ani di yagburos ro di sozu di chebayna maung sozu pugu putugi nanda sozu getugi nanda an tusu sozula ya kushib chiyata sozula ya 아니 천동샤야디 장신기 용거로 왔어라 어두zu 두zu간 상황이 몇 상황이 제거했지 그래 몇 상황이 제거해지 레스
In a Buddhist context, we call the teacher a lama, but if you just regard them, the person as a teacher, if you don't have any spiritual affiliation, then you can also include within your teachers those who teach you useful skills, those, someone that teaches you medicine or accounting, or someone that is teaching you the sciences. There are so many many kind teachers, and we develop a sense of respect to those teachers, and also we appreciate their kindness. We become grateful, and also we appreciate our aging parents, the ones that have taken care of us. So we also develop a sense of gratitude towards them, and all of those attitudes are making us good human beings. And if we act in this way, we also set an example for example, the children, the future generation. Or if you are a teacher, then you set an example for your students.
다 추케멜랭에 차다 고로 유에스는 유에스라고 고사리스라 추케멜랭이 차다 고로와디 가르레스라운디 추케멜랭이냐 나 아버지 제고 삼바 야자야다마 용거로 왔어 나 암지 아버지 롬바 코랑에 펜통 암지 아버지 개개 아버지 제고 삼나 알다모 니 용해라야 소수비게 아니 최대한다 직 아니 륜컴 야부지 고거로 왔어 딘지 베나 르종 되게 르종 지야디 아니 추케멜랭이 삼반남다 그 신라야 펜도 치고 삼비 공원티토는 수수 르종 지야디 꼬라차가다스러 아니 육셀로야 돼 르종 지야디 차지 육셀로야 돼 꼬란라 딘지 저 딘지기 베나 딘지 제바나 랑신이가래 펜비기 아니 차와지랜도스러 딘지 아니 식 뎀바 마야티 로 아니 셴라야 펜도 예비기 아니 랍자게라 소바 슈 케말레나야 그게 줄 매바 있나야 메카시 빼 아니 지 셴라야 로봇이야라야 빼 아니 가시 트로시 당들렌팅이 디 마무도 왔어 안 두스 칸이 펜야기 식지마도 너야 라그만다 디 캠드렌다스로 어 딘딜라 소 제반단 미디 아니 야구슈 차사레스
So although this section is explaining a spiritual practice from the point of view of being a Buddhist practitioner, then you can also, if you're not a Buddhist practitioner or a Dharma practitioner, you can still think about it in a way that is relevant to you. So it says that, for example, you should not cease to perform virtuous physical actions, such as acts of service towards your spiritual masters and the three jewels, prostrations and circumambulations. So prostrations and circumambulations are religious practices, but still, when you think about them in a secular way, you can think that a person that is helping others by teaching them medicine or other knowledges, other topics. They need to maintain a good physical well-being. They need to remain healthy. So if they need to exercise, to go for a run and so forth, in order to maintain the body in a good state so that they can continue to teach others, you can say that it is like similar to making prostrations and circumambulation. Also, it says that you should not cease to recite the refuge formula or recitations pertaining to meditational deities with your speech. So, for example, if your attitude is wanting to be of benefit to others, even if you're not a Dharma practitioner, if you take it up from the perspective of being a secular person, you still can have a strong wish to be of benefit to others. So you pursue that. And in your speech, you always speak truthfully, you give a good advice to others. So this is, you can say, in lieu of reciting the refuge formula or doing other recitations pertaining to meditational deities with your speech. And in your mind, you should nurture and never be parted from the awakening mind and its associated practices. So it ends in saying you should nurture and never be parted from the awakening mind and its associated practices. And so the next instruction says, if you relapse, meditate on it as the antidote.
아니 긴 딘지기 토니 초보 종무 딘지기 토니 아니 고고 테라 소바 양직 샘노 남도 잠은다기다 아니 저디 체나가 데스 람르 규금도 세요서 딘지 용거 다 딘지 까울이야 아니 텔이야 님보 땡고 그래서 딘지기 로야 텔이야 님보 땡고 그래서 최증이 지고라다 남말이 대발 로고에나 님보 땡지네 대바야 빼고 그래서 아니 로종에 쪼 로고에나 아니 로종기 해유 삼비토니 쪼와지 주고 그래서 어딘지를 쏘거든.
So you might be taking up a positive action, but still you're being deceived by your friends, or certain conceptions, discursive conceptions arise in your mind. You suspect that, for example, others might cheat you or might treat you ill and so forth, that they will that your actions will not be accomplished successfully, that things will not go well for you. With all those states, you need to apply an antidote to this way of thinking. In a way that is similar, for example, when the faith that we have in our spiritual friends wanes, we need to apply the antidote in increasing faith. When our enthusiasm to practicing is decreasing, we need to put an effort in increasing it.
셰바니 가시라 곰로키 로난 딘다원 종디 로종 곰비 미 메카난도송 당준소 뉴무바 첼송 세그 론조 총송 내den기 내버서만 손냠니 로종니 문제버 총니 돈니 예비 텐지 있잖아 춘디 물로 콜라 뒤지 친기라비 곰기 로로 총냠도 삼디 직디 이kam는 딘지 쳬로 로로 바만 대탐지 랑리디 코처니 탐지 태버침비 쳬던 균제버 규지지 힌타보니 삼
And so the text says, for some people, wrong meditation gives rise to such attitudes as having meditated on mind training, slanderous attacks have increased, or the misconception of self and other disturbing emotions have increased. My resources such as food and clothing have declined, and I'm troubled by an increase in sickness and the interference of evil spirits. If you feel like this, you will lose interest in mind training, and there is a risk of your giving up the practice. In such circumstances, you should think, this practice will never deceive me. It is influence of demons which is causing me to relapse from the practice of meditation. Wish from the depth of your heart that for the many people in the world whose minds are turned from the doctrine or the Dharma, this may serve as a cause for them to integrate their minds with the teachings of the great people. Have you got any questions? No questions? We might leave it here for today. Jane? The great Jane, sorry. Tadi Nyambachi. So I'll just repeat what you said to the people at home. So you're saying that if someone is waning, like faith and so forth, it is difficult to just make a U-turn and unwane. Yeah. Well, it's okay. Dila chik Nyambachi na penadi Nyambasena tevala sopa Nyambaina. Di manyamba chegu resla di ekale kavoresa tadi manyamba cheba sen
little bit difficult
ani kale kavores
little bit difficult na kare
tes kale kavor ani
pe kale kavore dos doesn't yet zanyi chunye
but Geshe is picking up on me because he said that it's a little bit difficult, which means that it is difficult. So I said, kind of in my translated, I said that it is difficult to do it. So is it a little bit difficult or is it very difficult? Da 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 da.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I will keep your question for a second. Maybe Geshe would still say something about Jen's question. No, it's okay.
Yeah, did it. 당한주 농주 강셔버들이야. 균den기지. 그 님이도 토마토와나. 당한주 깨르티 야소야디 갈카고 베시. 비가 알던 트런한 거라 비 젠데 거라 매대와 용거라서. 균den기 네바 가인 버들이야. 그 님이 통토와나. 아니 다 양잡이나 아니 대발로만자 나발라 바이오셔바디 냠수 치엘이야 아니 배준 연구였어요. 슉 내고 왔어요. 근데 슉 내봐이나 아니 깔라카고 지단다 깔라카고 있네. 쇼지 그 아, 나도 깔라카고 가서는 첸데 매버진 거라다. 아, 근데 라마질이야. 담부 대바야 보지. 주디 견을 통디. 근데 디기 대박 가지고 검사 들어와네. 한 통대 견디 까대서. 대박 상대 매주지. 깔라카고 딘 거라서. tapi nyimik du thoma yana jaji yada ma di pambezun chiela ya shuk do lego sares ani kale chon do chi
So we might have a mistake in our approach to a certain element in our practice. And so long as we do not see that mistake as a certain disadvantage or a certain shortcoming, will not feel like addressing it. So the point that we start addressing is by seeing that this is a fault, it is disadvantages, or this is a shortcoming in our practice. So when we see something as being a shortcoming, we make effort in order to restore that. And we restore that through making effort in our practice. It might be hard, but we can still do that if once we recognize that this is a shortcoming in our spiritual practice. So the thing that makes it hard is not wishing to do so, not wanting to do so, not feeling like wanting to do so. So for example, we have faith or trust in a spiritual teacher, and then it weakens, or kind of it is lost. We don't feel like continuing with that. So once we recognize that this is a shortcoming in a spiritual practice, so kind of recognizing a shortcoming for being a shortcoming, or some disadvantage as being a disadvantage, then we can become more we can make more effort. We can become more inclined to do something about it. So when we the whole point is to recognize the areas which are deficient in a practice. If we do recognize that they're deficient, then we'll be more inclined to make effort. And then it becomes not that hard.
난저다 남규네 비기다지 냠len chetanti samsam des지 노르다서가 가서나 맞아 갑둘래야지 정지 퇴약이 레와 기업체니 베네 cam도 쌓인 바난다 아니지 이게 쌓인 바난다 갑둘래야지 레와지 정지지 레야 미니 제대야지 용거라서 오늘 제발나 아니 쪼디 견래야 아니 견 통해 돈이 교섭기 투야 견 통야 아니 비 기회 졸래야 대박게 투야 쪼지 투야기 연대 어든지 삼니 아니 냠내라 주바이나 아니 강아디 배촌로 로사레스로 디메나 갑두고 tum지질에 싸운다는 지어봐이나 디께서 지어래야 tum지 마찬디 semjuda mazun chador dani kyarso chedi begal kau chagosares.
One of the mistakes that we make in our practice is we expect immediate results. So we take up a certain practice, like for example, recitation of the refuge formula, or we take up a practice of purification using the recitation of the mantra of Vajrasattva, the 100-syllable mantra, and we expect those practices to bear immediate results. And when they do not produce those immediate results, we become disheartened, or our practice becomes kind of loses momentum. So rather than developing that expectation that we should have immediate results from a practice, we continue with the practice in which we see a faults, we recognize a faults, we develop a regret for negative actions that we have done before, we become more enthused about virtue. And then as we continue to do that, our problems and difficulties decrease. If our expectation is not focused on kind of a long-term process, but our expectations are such that we expect immediate result, it's likely not to happen, and then we indeed will feel disappointed in our spiritual practice. All right, so Robbie was asking about one of the points that Geshe mentioned. So Geshe said that when we move from this lifetime to the next, there's sense consciousnesses like the eye, ear, nose, and so forth consciousnesses do not proceed from this lifetime to the next, they cease. So, and the thing that does go from this lifetime to the next is the mental consciousness. So Robbie is asking about the imprints of those sense consciousnesses. Surely they do go from this lifetime to the next. Is that correct? Yeah. Kewa dine kewa chimala trudu sambaya dilla kerangi one shiten so drogi mares illudin drogires namshi di gal drogires gagires je kasa migi namshi di nangi namshi di la sopa one shiten so gagires dita la sound di kewa chimala marjoa di pacha drogi mares the mi sheva di la sopa pacha kewa chimala drogeres drogimares.
Pacha jindro chogres. Something like a pacha shagot drogores.
The imprints do go from this lifetime to the next. So we have imprints of consciousnesses, and indeed they go from this lifetime to the next. You can say that they go, that they do.
Taji mixi pacha shaktanti kasada manzugi kunjog ten sorujiya ani miki jebaina and di ani jebi pacha ji semlya nibachik chek dosra ta pacha san nibachik
Kunjogi tensana di kunja de la sopa.
sanji kuzola sopa ta miki jebak ten the division was this.
So we have imprints that can go from this lifetime to the next. Like, for example, your eye consciousness might see a Buddha image. It depends upon that an imprint is placed upon the continuum. So such imprints do go from this lifetime to the next.
Because Pasha the leg nibase it was. Less on the Chavajal Jagova. The Mixi Chavachivati. Mixi Chavachi with Nibachik Kevachimala Drogodes. Nashi Chavachi with Nibachik. Mixi Koran Chavacheva was. Mixi di Yula Tawabo. Mixi Yula Tawadi, the Mixi Chavaris. He told the Nibach Chagwasta. Is the little real.
And then also some Washington so Sabungi no like you to sigro. Nobala to just on the Sheba Koran Nobala Sigirve Yamana Jawe Nobala.
Chavin Nibala Jargo was a sound. Corgon living on Ku Ege, Ku Chava Dige, and a Semlay at Nibach Jagwa. Ku Chavati.
So when we think of the eye consciousness, for example, and how by looking at a Buddha image, let's say, there's an imprint that is placed upon the continuum or upon the mind, and that goes from this lifetime to the next. It is a potential of activity, of an action, which means that it is connected with karma, with actions. So when we speak about the imprints, we often speak of the imprints of certain actions that we do. So, for example, the eye is observing something. The action is an action of observing. And there is a potential that is left by the action of observing, by the activity of observing. So then those potentials go from this lifetime to the next. So I just had a kind of a brief conversation with Geshe about how it is otherwise stated. He said that when moving from this lifetime to the next, the sense consciousnesses go into a seed form. So Geshe said that the way that he thinks of going into a seed form and moving from this lifetime to the next is what goes into a seed form is the potential of activities, the potential of actions. The sense consciousnesses operate, and there is a potential for acting or operating. So these potentials go from this lifetime to the next.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. We'll leave it here for now. So we'll finish the session with making some dedication verses for all the virtue or the merit that we have accumulated together in this session. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that is not arisen arise and grow, and may that which is arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. O powerful Jinrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remind till samsara ends. Savior of the snowland teachings and transmigratory beings who make extremely clear the path that is unification of emptiness and compassion. To the lotus holding Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You uphold the subduous moral way, who serves in the manifold bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Majjhima's victorious doctrine. O mercifully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels. Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please live long.
Lava Sumdang Women Zambayan Divi Sotin in the Young Hansen. Tadu Jeru Jarvis and Devon to then short to give it a sea show.
Thank you.